1500 ESPN is KSTP, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and now available in high definition on 107.1 KTNY, Coon Rapids, HD2. You're listening to Tom Pelissero.
I don't want you to be the guy in the PG-13 movie everyone's really hoping makes it happen. I want you to be like the guy in the rated R movie.
It's Tom Pelissero.
The guy you're not sure whether or not you like yet. You're a bad man.
On 1500 ESPN.
I am officially retiring from the NFL.
Time to leave.
I enjoyed my experience.
I know I put everything I could into it. I got everything I had dreamed up and then some out of it. So, on to the next phase.
As they say, all good things must come to an end.
Brett's retirement and re-retirement and unretirement and the third retirement, it does not get old. Michael Neelsen, director of Last Day at Lambeau, new documentary on Brett Favre. The debuts next week, I believe, at the Film Festival in Madison. It comes to Minneapolis about a week after that. Michael, this has been 2 years in the works for you, if not more than that. It has to be rewarding to know that it's finally going to see the light of day.
It absolutely is, Tom, and thank you for having me on your show. It's kind of surreal to see it finally ending, but we knew it was always going to come to this. It was, a real passion project for us, and if it were a subject that we weren't quite as interested in, I'm sure we wouldn't have seen it through. But this is a real passion project for us. So yeah, it's a joy.
And I got the screener a few months ago. I can say honestly and unbiasedly, it's very well done. The pace and the weave of the story, even as somebody who lived through it and really knows a lot of the details that went into it, both in Green Bay and then here in Minneapolis, it does grip you. And the film has a way of moving this story along from a different sort of a viewpoint than a lot of people probably have. What was your starting point in writing it, and did it end up going the direction you thought it would in production?
It did. Outside of the details, obviously, we don't know a lot of. We started filming the week running up to his last game at Lambeau Field on October 24th, 2010. So we didn't know how that game was going to end. But outside of those details of history that weren't written yet, it absolutely went the way we wanted to. We approached this not as a film about Brett Favre versus the Packers, but using that story as a prism through which to examine the relationship that people have with their heroes, and specifically sports fans have with their heroes. It's a very strange relationship, but we all have experienced it where you idolize this person, especially someone like Brett Favre, who was around for so long in the league. People grew up watching him, not knowing football without him, and discovering that maybe he's not who you thought he was. Does that make him a bad person? Does that, change anything else? We've all seen this and experienced this in little ways, and with Brett Favre, it just kind of happened en masse with a whole group of fans.
And even though it's called Last Day at Lambeau, you really follow this back to, well, first of all, your childhood in some regard, and then in quite detailed fashion from really March 2008, Brett Favre's first retirement, through November 2010, when the Vikings played that game in Green Bay and Percy Harvin's foot came down just out of bounds and all that, what would have been the winning touchdown. For people who haven't seen it, because I have seen the film, just explain a little bit about what sort of a journey this will take people on.
It's interesting. I think a lot of people who have not seen it are already making up their minds about what the film is. I made the mistake of going on some message boards about the film recently on some fan sites, and people are, based on what they see online, the little clips that are out, some clips sound like they're a little bit more pro-Favre, some clips sound like they're a little more anti-Favre, and they take that as a speech for the whole film, or representative of the whole film. It's not. I'm not particularly interested in who was right or who was wrong or anything like that necessarily. I'm interested in examining this relationship, perceived or not, that happens between heroes and the fans. I think people may learn some things that they hadn't known before, but more than anything else, I think it just offers another perspective, like you said, that maybe people hadn't looked at it as before.
Michael Neelsen is with us. Full disclosure, I should mention, I do have a role in the film, along with a lot of people I've gotten to know through the years, in my days covering the Packers, and people who have been on the show, Lori Nickel, Greg Bedard, Rob Domofsky, Mike Vandermoss. Was the way that the media drove the story the impetus for telling it from that perspective, as opposed to telling it from the player's perspective or the organization's perspective?
Well, the organization and the players won't really speak right now. So, but again, it wasn't really that wasn't really the focus. So yeah, we went to the media and specifically local media because of the fact that you guys covered it on the ground. You were there for these events and seeing it from your perspective, in a more kind of elongated way than perhaps has been, given in little like sound bites and appearances on TV shows and whatnot. Actually going into the fact that, it was your 27th birthday the day he retired and you were at the press conference. These little things just kind of add a whole new kind of perspective to the story that I think is unique and interesting and gives people a new way to look at the story and hopefully kind of take some of the emotion out of it. It's a very emotional thing, sports, for us, but, potentially the way to look at this now that we've had a little distance from it is to look at it with, less emotion and more kind of reason and rationality.
And you also do interview fans, which I think is the other part of the picture, because as Lori Nichols says in one of the trailers that I've seen several times, the fans sort of got left out of this. You had Brett Favre doing what he wanted to do for him, Ted Thompson and the Packers doing what they wanted to do for them. No one asked the fans, and even though you had the guy paying somebody in a plane to fly the Save Brett or whatever it was over the stadium on family night, and even though you had dozens of people marching and you had people signing, thousands of people signing a petition, people doing polls and all these things, the fans' perspective really never was taken into account, which I completely understand from a football perspective and from Brett Favre's perspective, because it was never a two-way street between Brett Favre and fans, and I think that's a huge reason that it devolved to the point that it did, where you had people burning Favre jerseys. It was the fact that everybody believed that they loved Brett Favre the same amount that he loved them, and in fact, that just wasn't the case.
Right, absolutely, and as you said, that perspective is needed of the fans because we're talking about that very relationship. We have St. Vince, who's like the big Packers fan in Wisconsin. We have Sid, 100% cheese-free Davey, the big Vikings fan who lives up in Canada. A lot of fans come in and give their perspectives, and you're right. I see it from the football perspective as well that there's really no reason for them to take into account, the fans' opinion on this. But in the end, that's where a lot of the history is going to be written. The fans, the talk that goes on at sports bars. How is Brett Favre going to be remembered? Well, he's going to be remembered differently in sports bars than he is, on, some major network somewhere. So.
And I'm sure a lot of people had a lot of profanity when they first were going through this entire Brett Favre thing. But if I'm not mistaken, I'm the only one who gets to swear in the movie, which is nice because I can't swear on this show.
That's right, exactly. We'll keep it a secret by necessity on the show. We won't repeat what you say.
That would be good. Film debuts in Madison a week from tomorrow, right?
Correct, yeah. April 18th in Madison, and then we have an encore on the 21st. And then we're in Minneapolis at the St. Anthony Main Theater April 29th at 7:15.
And how can people get more information on the film, and how can they get tickets if they want to come to that Minnesota premiere?
LastDayAtLambeau.com. We have all the information on tickets there as well. It's part of the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Film Festival, so you'll get tickets from them, but we have the link on our website. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at @FavreFilm, and we're updating all the time on there. So.
And I will see you on the 29th. Thanks for coming on the show, Michael.
Absolutely. See you then, Tom.
Michael Neelsen, director of Last Day at Lambeau, the new documentary on Brett Favre. You can check out all the places that he just listed to find out more info on the film.
1500 ESPN is KSTP, St. Paul, Minneapolis.